Well, here we are in mid-September, and like most of you, my tomato plants have pretty much played out. I am down to 2 producing tomato plants. Both of them still have some tomatoes on them. I would say probably 15, 20 tomatoes each. I am still getting tomatoes. I gathered several this morning, in fact. However, one thing interesting this year, I've had problems with a pest that I have never had a problem with before. The squirrels seem to be eating my tomatoes. I really don't know what to do about this either. I've tried netting, didn't work. I have an electric fence, but apparently that's not stopping them. This morning when I came to gather tomatoes, as I walked up to my tomato cage, I noticed a red ripe tomato fell from a pine tree, where obviously a squirrel had been feasting on it. In fact, the pine tree behind me has a couple of tomatoes under it where they have been eating them. So that has been a problem. I've just really been dealing with it, just gathering them a little early, not worrying too much about it. Well, like most of you, I did know, in fact, this would happen. I did know that my tomato plants would play out in the fall. So I did take some precautions. Along July or so, I actually took some suckers from here and rooted them and planted them in another part of the garden. So let's go take a look and see how they're doing. Well, here we are with my fall tomatoes. As I said earlier, I rooted these from my old tomatoes, or my current tomatoes at the time. Initially, I actually went to the home store to find tomatoes to plant, but by that time, end of July, August time period, all the tomatoes were really picked over. The ones that it did have were either very expensive or kind of sickly looking, root bound, this kind of stuff. So I did what I've done in many years in the past and simply rooted tomatoes because it's really not that hard to do. How I do that is I will go and find suckers on the plant. Let me show you what a sucker is. If you see here, here is our main tomato plant stem growing. And off this stem we have a side branch. Well, between the side branch and the stem is a sucker. So this little guy is known as a sucker. I would let this guy get probably 6 to 8 inches. And then I would go and I gathered probably 8 to 10 suckers. As soon as I gather them, I immediately put them in a vase of water and let them stay in the water for probably about an hour. After this, I went and put them directly into my garden. I planted them in the row I used to have onions in, if you've been watching my updates. And when I went to plant them, I mixed in some good rich compost, and I kind of dug out a saucer area and planted the tomato plant in the saucer area. Then, for the next 2 weeks, I watered the heck out of these tomato plants. I just kept them soaked. Probably, 2 or 3 times a day, come and give them a really good soaking. Additionally, being end of July, August time period in Georgia, extremely hot, I gave them some protection from the sun. And how I did that is I took some sawhorses, put them in my row, and then put boards on top of this sawhorse so that at noon in the direct heat of the day, they did have some protection from the sun. 2 key tips. Had I been more careful, I probably could have saved all my tomatoes. I ended up planting 8. Of the 8, 5 survived. This is probably my healthiest. It's about 4 feet tall. It's loaded with buds. I do not see any tomatoes on it yet, so that does worry me a little. I did plant these probably a little late. I probably should have planted them in June time frame. Now here it is, mid-September. My first frost date typically is October 20th. So if I get tomatoes off this, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, doesn't cost me anything, so if I don't, no harm done. But anyway, I would encourage you to try this. It's actually pretty good. I would encourage you to start it a little earlier, pay a little more attention to your frost dates. If this was in June and I had a month left, I wouldn't be worried. However, with getting cooler weather, shorter days, the tomato plants won't be growing quite as fast, so I don't know if I'll get tomatoes off these or not, but we'll give it a shot. Well, here we are in front of my sweet potatoes. And if you've been watching my garden updates, you saw me plant the sweet potatoes earlier this year. And how you plant sweet potatoes, you actually grow them from slips. You do not grow them from seeds. Now, a sweet potato slip is merely taking a sweet potato and letting it sprout. Something I'm sure we're all familiar with from our kitchen. from regular potatoes or sweet potatoes. Once they have sprouted, you break off this sprout and you put it in water. Now, unlike my tomatoes where I put them in a vase of water for an hour, I actually left the sweet potatoes in the water for probably 2 to 3 weeks until they really started forming roots. Now, once they started forming roots, I then came and planted them in the garden, and I carefully prepared a nice bed for them, raised bed, mixed compost in, planted the sweet potatoes. I would guess probably 8 plants or so. Water them well for the first few weeks and then let them go. Sweet potatoes love hot weather, and we have hot weather in Georgia. Now, all summer long, my wife and I have battled with the sweet potatoes, trying to keep them in their path or in the aisle. And you can see behind me, we have since lost that battle a long time ago. In fact, I have basil on this side, and I have peppers on this side. Now, between the basil and the peppers, the sweet potatoes behind me, there should be a nice, neat 1-foot path on each side of the sweet potatoes. Well, that path, we lost that months ago. And now the sweet potatoes are actually on the other side of the peppers, the other side of the herbs. They're just all over the place. Now, I could let the sweet potatoes continue to grow, but honestly, I'm starting to need the space. We're starting to get a little cool weather. It's about time for me to put out my cabbage plants and my broccoli. Got garlic I want to plant. I just need my garden space. I know, in fact, the sweet potatoes are ready because I actually have sweet potatoes protruding from the ground. So I know it's time to gather them. Like I say, I could leave them in there. I'm sure they would get bigger, but I need the space, so I'm going to go and gather them. So let's gather some sweet potatoes and see what's under the soil. Well, I got quite a haul from my sweet potatoes, including some huge sweet potatoes. Now, you might have noticed when I was digging up the sweet potatoes that the sweet potatoes seem to be clumped around the base of the plant. Don't be fooled by this, because in fact the sweet potatoes will send out runners, and you'll find sweet potatoes all within the row. So ensure you dig up the entire row to capture all your sweet potatoes. Also, I am leaving my sweet potatoes out a few days and let them sun dry. This helps the skin harden, and therefore they'll store much better.